We really followed that public power model of bringing in electricity, back in the day, so to speak, and we kind of feel like we're in that second generation of our purpose to bring them high-speed internet into areas that don't have it otherwise.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota, and speaking today with Jamie Davis, the Vice President of Fiber and the Chief Technology Officer at the Knoxville Utilities Board. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris, for having me today.
It's really great to talk to you, Jamie. I let you know ahead of time, like I've been watching Knoxville a bit. I was in Chattanooga before they actually built their network, around the time they had just started construction of it, and I've been fascinated by just a lot of the real nation-leading investment we've seen in Tennessee, and so I'm just excited to be talking to you several years into this project and spreading the word. So let's just start with what does the Knoxville Utility Board do across the board, and then we'll come back to the fiber network.
KUB is a five-service utility. We serve Knoxville, Knox County, and parts of 7 surrounding counties with services around electricity, water, wastewater, and natural gas. And now our 5th and newest division in fiber is with all our Tennessee distributors of TVA. State law allows us to serve fiber where we serve electricity. We have about 5,000 miles of electric conductor covering 200,000 customers. And so that's where we will be able to serve fiber as we continue our deployment.
And we're talking about Knoxville with the University of Tennessee. We're talking about more than 200,000 homes. So, maybe approaching 500,000 people about.
I assume so. That sounds about right. I'd have to look at the numbers to be sure. 100,000 for sure on any given Saturday inside of Neyland Stadium. Let's say that, not teasing.
And now you're building out the fiber network, and I assume that this has significant implications for electricity, but for my interests, delivering high quality internet access to every last person that gets your electricity service. That's a remarkable goal given how spread out you are outside of those dense areas.
Absolutely, we're a very diverse system. A lot of folks think that we are just kind of the urban area, like you called out, kind of city of Knoxville proper. But our density in some of our more rural areas, we really followed that public power model of bringing in electricity, back in the day, so to speak. And we kind of feel like we're in that second generation of our purpose to bring them high-speed internet into areas that don't have it otherwise.
Okay, so you're building out the fiber network, and I want to get to the story of how we got there, but let's just update people on where you are. You started construction, was it 1 or 2 years ago?
We have been building a fiber backbone, if you will, to our substations really over about the past 5 or 6 years. We were officially, allowed to be in the business in July of 21, and that's when it really kind of hit hyperdrive to really try to launch out to other communities. We've extended into 3 major areas. We lit our first pilot customer in July of this past year. And right now, currently continuing to extend in other areas, opening up new areas as the months go along in that particular regard. We have made service available to about right at 18,000 customers. By the end of the fiscal year, we'll add another 13,000 available. By the end of next fiscal year, so June of 24, it'll be made available right at about 90,000 customers. We'll be almost halfway through our entire build at that particular point in time.
And that is, I feel like, a pretty remarkable pace.
Definitely moving right along as fast as we can in that particular regard. Supply chain's been a little bit of an issue, as it is with everybody in their personal lives right now. But folks are for sure clamoring for our service, and so we're trying to meet that demand just as fast as we can.
So I remember back in, I want to say like 2012, Knoxville first came on my radar as I started seeing local news stories from television outlets in Knoxville talking about businesses that were looking with some envy over at Chattanooga. And I think a few even started expanding into Chattanooga. And at that time, your existing cable and telephone companies said the same thing that they tell everyone, which is our services here are great and you don't need anything else. And I recall, although I didn't go back to double check, I recall the utility board at that time saying, this is not something that we are prepared to do. Like, we're excited that Chattanooga is doing it, but it is not something that we think we should do. And so I'm just curious, if you can walk us through a little bit of how the utility board, thought about this. You mentioned the pandemic, so I'm sure that played an important role in it.
Absolutely. I mean, back then, a lot of folks had a desire for us to get into space, just like Chattanooga. I personally have been involved in two or three, reviews of this being an effort. And at every step, there were commitments by those already in the business to serve the customers that had not been served. And so we thought that would be an option as time went on. As we built that fiber backbone for our substations, we would reach out to existing providers and say, if we can play a part in helping you extend to our customers, we'd be glad to do that. And again, we would receive commitment. No, we're gonna serve. We're gonna reach these communities. And then with the pandemic, it really heightened. I mean, all of us, obviously, what you and I are sitting here doing today online, having a conversation, became our normal way of life for health and education and just staying connected. It was at that point we really felt like that it no longer become just entertainment, entity for having internet service. It really was in the pure sense of a utility. Our existing city mayor, India Kincannon, had asked our CEO, Gabriel Bolus, to take a look. Is this an option for KUB at this point in time? And that was actually right before the pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, it really kind of changed, I would tell you, the equation. And what we saw was not only were there unserved folks in what people historically think are our rural counties, but what we would call underserved, even within the shadow of where I'm sitting in downtown Knoxville today, that there may be pockets of folks that either from an affordability perspective or even just a adequate service perspective or a cost to extend that last mile to them, service was just unobtainable. And so, beyond just the business aspects of it, it really was I'll call it a purpose aspect. It really kind of hit us and realized that we needed to be playing a role in our community. And so I think with all that being said, the models have been proven out. We've got folks and our neighbors, our friends at EPB, at Morristown, others who've been in this space now for multiple years. They've kind of paved the way, forged the trail, and shown the rest of us how it can work. And as a result, we took pages out of their playbook. And I think that's really what changed. I like to tell folks, we were right for us, for Knoxville, in those earlier years that you referenced, and we're right now today as well too. Folks have come into this space at different times for different reasons, and but our story is that again, the pandemic really kind of highlighted the need for that. And you referenced earlier the need for the technology on our other utility system side. The case for fiber really starts for us as utility folks in managing the system of the future. Automation is going to be the way to go. Folks have a higher and higher reliance on reliability. There's more and more data to be gathered out on the system, and you need a low latency, high speed, very reliable communication medium to help you do that. Fiber for us is that medium of choice. And when you've got that network, it just enables you to be able to provide broadband service to citizens, and they're asking for it, and there's need for it as well too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you discussed there, I think, is something I want to just emphasize. People that are paid to oppose these projects. I'm not saying that there's no one who has an honest degree of opposition to them, but the folks who are loudest, often getting those paychecks, they they'll say things like, oh, these cities just dive in without really understanding what they're doing. Chattanooga went through 4 or 5 different business studies over more than a decade before Harold DePriest decided that it was a smart investment for them. You went through several, and I think that's important for people to hear, that this is not something where the pandemic hit and you said, well, let's embark on a 5th utility. You're able to look at those numbers. You have a sense of how the numbers are changing on a every couple of year basis. And you're able to make that decision based on, different changing factors and including a forecast of what you think you're likely to get from other private investment, I think.
It's not to be taken lightly. For KUB, it's a significant investment. We are called to be good stewards of our ratepayers' money. This is their system. It's not mine. It's not our board of directors. It's theirs. And so really it's their choice. And some of the strongest feedback we got were from our constituents. By state law, in our approval process, we're required to have public meetings. A public meeting, we had two. And the overwhelming feedback that we got time and time again was we need a better product. And that was indicative of whether that was in the rural areas or in the highly densely served areas of Knoxville. I think that as the demands of capacity and speed and reliability continue, our tolerance for the spinning wheels, we call it, is smaller and smaller. Devices, the number of devices you're getting connected in your home are more and more and more. From an economic development perspective, Chattanooga has proven through their models and studies that it's been billions of dollars of impact in the Chattanooga area. Their brand as a city of gig city really kind of cascades down to a number of areas. And we too commissioned a study with the Boyd Institute at the University of Tennessee, and they predict similar benefits to our community of having 100% fiber to home network in our area. So again, I think that whether that's the municipal co-op model or whether that's the for-profit provider model, both can work. It's just the notion that folks deserve this type of service, and communities are beginning to expect it. And I think if you want to be a community of the future, you have to have this type of infrastructure.
Yes, I think it is important to note, the role of the utility is not to try to put any existing businesses out of business. It is to make sure that everyone has, a good service. It's to raise the bar for what is the minimal accepted pricing and services and whatnot. And then people have a choice. And one of the things we've seen is, I could name, I think, 2 out of well over 200 where there are citywide systems where the private telecommunications providers pulled out. And those are both very small areas. I mean, these investments are smart for encouraging competition. I wondered if you could compare a little bit, just so people have a sense. This is it is an expensive investment. I'm guessing multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. I forget what it was, but could you put that in context of the other investments that the utility has made as well, so people have some context?
Just rough terms, again, off the top of my head, this is about a $700 million endeavor over a course of about 7 to 10 years, let's call it. That's both operations and capital expenditures. KUB right now, we just had our budget presentation yesterday. We are now, as a company with 5 utilities, $1 billion budget a year. So you can kind of get a perspective in that particular regard. As far as a multi-year project, probably the largest that, for sure that we've done. But we've also been under a consent decree for our wastewater system. So those are very large projects. We currently have a project at our water plant that is the single largest project of KU's history.
That's one of the things that I've really learned in all of this work is that people have no idea how expensive water treatment plants are. When people talk about internet access being expensive.
and higher the regulation, the more expensive things ultimately get. Now, being in the utility business is very capital intensive. It's infrastructure. That's the reason we hear it talked about on a national level, with a lot of the ARPA funds that are coming down and everything else too. Obviously, we all kind of take it for granted. And we like our customers doing that. We don't want to be necessarily thought about. We want to be in the shadows, providing great service to our neighbors. But as we call our Century 2 program, I mean, these investments in some cases in our cities are hundreds of years old. And it's time for us to be in a methodical, logical way of replacing those aging assets. In the case of fiber, it's really the next generation. Years ago at KUB, we connected our substations with twisted copper pair. Somebody had a vision of having an analog communication network, allowing us to communicate from point to point to point. Somebody stepped out on a limb, made that investment. It paid off for decades in that particular regard. We don't even have an idea of how our fiber investment is going to pay off fully. We've got a really great thing of what we know today, but we know that future applications that will be able to ride on that network, we don't even understand what they are nowadays. So we believe that our uses from the utility side, our customers' uses from the receiving broadband service are just, that case is a solid and steady case, but there'll be uses that you and I don't even know about.
One of the things that also has struck me in looking at Tennessee as a whole, which I expect, as you just said, we won't know for a while I mean, the supply chain, the inflation is going to put pressure on you. But when we looked at all of the citywide broadband systems in Tennessee, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, we found that I believe half of them had never raised their prices. Some of them for more than a decade. For internet service. Now, cable television is different because that's a nightmare of a business to be in where you don't have a lot of control. But Chattanooga still hasn't raised their rates to begin with. You're coming in with a very competitive rate for a gigabit. And I'm curious how that's being received by the public.
Very, very solid. I think that, what we've seen, and you referenced it earlier about the general response of incumbent providers once a new entrant to market. The proverbial high tide raises all ships. And we said too that if our entry into the market extends better service from our competitors, then Knoxville and the area wins as well. And so right now, from a market value perspective, there's some really good deals going on in Knoxville as it relates to internet. But at the same time, our plan is to be non-gimmicky, non-promotional, and really taking a page out of Chattanooga's playbook of consistency and being a fair dealer in the market. And in our case, $65 for a gigabit symmetrical unlimited. And in our business case plans, you never want to nail anything in the stone, but our thought is that price is going to hold for a long time. It's a very fair value in the market. I talked with our board yesterday, literally, about what the competition has done, and for sure for a gigabyte, we are still the best deal in town as it relates to that. So many of your other co-op and municipal providers in our area are very similarly priced, and so you can get that. In a lot of cases, you can get a gig or at least a half gig pack for similar pricing in some of the most rural areas of East Tennessee when it's a muni or co-op.
Right. And so $65 a month, no gimmicks. And that then results in, you're talking about 200,000 households. Not everyone yet, I'm sure, is seeing the result of that competition because you're in a fraction of the area. And those other companies are often pretty good about targeting their sales folks to where you are and where you will be in the next 6 months. But as you're rolling through this, from the numbers that we have seen, we would expect, well over possibly more than $2 or $3 million of extra money in aggregate in the community every month, and well over $10-15 million of savings per year. That's new money, effectively. That's in people's wallets that would not have been there. You're not getting that money. They're probably, I think most people take that to a local restaurant or a movie or something like that with that, that sort of extra money in their pocket. But it's a big deal. It adds up over time.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the key economic benefits that the Boyd Center report that I referenced mentioned, was that let's just call it disposable income. At that point, people can choose to utilize that elsewhere, and especially with inflationary pressures on all of us nowadays, everybody can appreciate a little more cash in the pocket, so to speak.
Now, you have a good relationship with the state broadband office. They have put a lot of money into the highest quality networks in rural areas. I'm excited that in Tennessee to date, we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but one of several states which is making sure that public money is spent on long-term investments that are going to meet people's needs, often through entities that are really committed and locally rooted. Those local co-ops and municipal networks in many cases, or providers that have proven time and again that they are focused on the future of Tennessee. You got $15 million to connect some of those more rural areas. And I guess I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about that program. And do you anticipate needing to get additional funds to help with some of those more real low density areas? Or is this pretty much what you needed? I can't imagine that's all you needed.
Well, believe it or not, as I discussed, we have some pretty low density rural areas, but under current criteria, which is basically the FCC maps, where in the case of the state of Tennessee, we applaud them for raising that FCC standard of 25.3 up to 120, meaning that if it did not have download speeds of 100, upload speeds of 20 megabytes, then it was eligible. That opened up what we were eligible to apply to grants for quite a bit. Had that speed been raised a little bit more or other prohibitions lifted, perhaps we would have awarded more dollars. But where the FCC maps would tell you that is not available, we received 4 of the 5 grant application areas, and those 4, like you said, total $15 million. It will for the most part cover all the costs in those particular areas that meet that criteria. That's not all of our rural areas, but again, the rural areas where that criteria is met. And it goes a long way in those areas. But if we're talking a $400 million capital budget, it's a small portion, but every bit helps. We're very tickled. We do have a wonderful broadband program here in the state of Tennessee, led by great directors over the years with real vision of how to do that. It's a real partnership effort. If you see about who's been awarded the grants, it's not all muni, not all co-op, not all for-profit providers. I think it's been a very balanced scorecard in that area. But I think all the providers, and for sure the heart of the broadband director there is to get broadband to folks that need it in the most rural areas of Tennessee that have been really left behind in many years. So this has been a long-standing, I guess you'd say, tradition for this office to be putting public funds into this space. And I think with the most recent funds that have been flowing down to the state of Tennessee, really meet the needs of some of the folks, our citizens, that need it the most. And so we're very excited about that. So the shot clock has started. We've got 3 years to get into those areas, and we're about to light the first area in our electoral community, which covers parts of the Union and Granger counties. Our rural areas, we're going to hopefully light them up this May, which is almost now. So hopefully late May, early June is our goal, and we're very, very excited about that. Those folks are very excited about getting gigabyte service to them.
You alluded to other restrictions. Tennessee, not the broadband office, but the legislature has for 25 years, I think at this point, not allowed the cities, the municipal electric providers to provide service outside of their electric boundaries. And I'm guessing that your CSRs probably still get phone calls from people who are on the wrong side, and they're upset and confused that you are not able to serve them, and that's got to be a frustration for a lot of folks involved.
When there are neighbors, we see them at the ballpark or places of worship and things like that. And they say, "Man, I wish I could get KUB fiber," or whoever it might be. So, well, you're not our electric customer. In our case, providing now 5 services. We, for example, have an area where we may provide only natural gas service and not electricity. Yet we feel a relationship with them that we can't provide them service. In many cases for KUB, the good news is our neighboring utilities have decided to be in the space as well. So they at least have access to a provider. It's in the areas in which our folks have no service or very, very, very limited service that it's a little bit of a frustration in that regard. There's been an ongoing dialogue amongst all distributors for a number of years now about, perhaps a good neighbor provision, which would allow a distributor to talk to another distributor, electric company to electric company, and be invited in to their territory and say, "Can you do this for us?" And I know there's been good discussion at the legislature, but today nothing's really moved forward of substance.
Yeah, we've seen that in Iowa. We've seen that in Wisconsin, Illinois. No, Indiana is what I'm thinking of. I don't know, maybe in Illinois, but I am not aware of anyone off the top of my head. And that's the sort of thing that I just say that I understand that people are worried about risk and about cities or municipal electric utilities doing something that they're not that familiar with. But once you've established a track record of success, the risk of expanding to another city is really quite low. And so it's not the best justification for not allowing that. So, but that said, we're running out of time. And I really want to ask you about the Student Internet Access Program, which is something that I think is somewhat newer. I don't even know if you've gotten it rolling or not yet, but I know that it's been talked about for a while. What are you doing on that program?
Well, I'm pleased to report that we're starting to pilot that program with 3 high schools in the area in which we have a relationship with in our inner city. Wish we could take credit for the creation or concept of this program, but again, emulating our friends at EPB, when the pandemic hit, they to meet the need of kiddos that were being unserved, worked with their local school board, their local governments, and some private foundations to create a program that literally we mirror, that will provide free internet to students that meet certain criteria. income-based criteria.
For people that want to look it up, this Hamilton County Schools over in the Chattanooga version of it's called HCS EdConnect. And I've talked with Deb Sosha about it several times over the years. Wonderful program and really exciting that you all were able to build on it.
Absolutely. We met with our local officials and said, as KUB gets into this business, some of our costs are going to increase, such as the in lieu of taxes that we pay. We don't pay taxes, but we pay in lieu of taxes. And said, as a community, why don't we do something neat? Why don't we take that incremental increased tax and fund a portion, if not all, of a program like this? And today, we've gotten it off the ground working with our city officials. They've been very supportive of that. As time goes on and our tax base increases, we can hopefully help more and more kids with that. But our program is called Connect Ed. Will be the name of our program, and again, utilizing the funds of the ACP, the Portable Connectivity Program. If a family would like to receive our funds for the educational portion, we basically mirrored the criteria for the ACP. They would qualify and receive ACP funds, and we fill in the gap in between there. We are also providing an in-home, as part of that service, an in-home router, which also then comes along with our technical support, helping them tune it, service it, whatever the case may be, to be sure that they're getting hooked up. The other thing that kind of partners then alongside of that, I think, is our Chamber of Commerce during the pandemic really filled a gap working with the school system, also not about connectivity, but about how to utilize technology. And so our eNox pilot here in Knoxville has started basically a technology training program for folks. That at the successful completion of that course, they receive a Chromebook and also are connected through hopefully a provider that's available in their neighborhood with affordable internet. So not only to really get people to access and utilize the internet, it's accessibility, it's affordability, and there's a knowledge base that's needed there to be able to do it. So we're really in our infancy here in Knoxville, and especially KUB, about getting our service out there, but also working on these two other programs. But we really see it as kind of the trifecta, if you will, of getting folks what they need in this space. So we're very excited about all of that.
That's great. I look forward to checking in with you on that in a few years to talk about some of the success stories of folks that are taking advantage of that and hopefully helping their family become a little bit further up on the economic income scale. One last thing I wanted to ask you about was just, you have any advice for folks that are they're seeing the state come around and asking about every state is building their broadband plan, and there's having these local meetings, and I think you wanted to encourage people to make sure they're taking part in that.
On a national dialogue, there's a lot of money being put into the plan by the Biden administration to expand broadband to areas that don't have broadband. I would encourage both consumers and other folks that are considering purveying services, get plugged in. How that looked for us, again, was our broadband community is strong here in Tennessee. Our Department of Economic Development that really heads up our broadband office and working with NTIA and local representatives of that have asked and have been having listening sessions, asking folks and asking purveyors how should we spend this money? How should it be laid out? I would encourage folks to get involved on the front end of that as opposed to waiting for the rules to be published. And so seek out your local NTIA rep or reach out at the federal level, your state broadband director, ask how they plan to dole out these funds and find out exactly how that's going to be spent in the communities, whether it be for access, for education. It feels as if there's an opportunity and plenty of money in those spaces to really do some good.
Wonderful. Well, Jamie Davis, it's been wonderful to meet you and to talk with you about what's going on in Knoxville.
Yes, sir, Chris. Great to talk with you and look forward to a future chat down the road.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Huseby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.